And, just a brief introduction. So we like to think that information theory and history are very different. One is exact sciences, one is humanities. What is the connection? So luckily, there is one person, maybe I should say at least one person in our society that masters both these disciplines. And I will not say his name right immediately. I would say that I used his advice when I was looking to trace the source of a story I knew about a book on n-dimensional geometry that somehow arrived from Shannon to Slepian and from Slepian to Winer, and I wanted to include this story in my book. So luckily, he could direct me to the source of the story. And then I thought that it would be nice that in ITW, he will tell some anecdotes, historical anecdotes, to everyone. And not only that he agreed, but he collected a distinguished panel of gentlemen in our society that to form a history session. And not only this, but he will tell you why this is a very special day today from historic perspective. So I would like to invite Professor Tony Ephraimidis to open the history panel. Please, Tony.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session. When Rami asked me, I guess he had some things in mind. As he explained, I had perhaps slightly different things in mind, and I thought we average things out by inviting a number of people who are thoroughly aware with the society's history, and so we will see what the synthesis of all this will bring. So history, as they say, it's for the old to remember and for the young to learn. Sometimes even the old learn. And one of the things that I must say, well, of course, Rami already mentioned, today happens to be 30th of April, the 99th birthday of Claude Shannon. Know how many of you knew that? So this is a nice coincidence. It was not by design, but we were very happy that we were given this opportunity. And we are, of course, our field is past its mid-century point, several years now. And as years go by, you know, many of the people who form this nice core of scientists leave us. And I think it would be appropriate, before we really get started, to mention a few of the names of those who probably would be here with us today. And I will ask them to hold 30 seconds silence in their memory. I will not mention everybody, but at least some of the people we are all familiar with and who stood out because of their contributions and because of their role in the society. Dave Slepian, Peter Elias, Aaron Winer, Jack Wolf, Tom Cover, Jim Massey. Thank you very much. And so history is being made every day. Sometimes the events are momentous, sometimes they are symbolic, sometimes they are trivial, but they all contribute to what we call history. So this workshop is writing history every day. And I'll give you an example of a trivial aspect of history that happened to me yesterday. So yesterday we went to the Masada, a nice excursion. And in my group, the leader of our group, the guide of our group, decided that it would be more effective if one of us were to read the moving words of courage and sacrifice of Eleazar related to the final moments in Masada. And he picked me. I was sitting closer. And he gave me the text, and I read it. I think I read it somewhat pompously. And just as I finished, a little bird that was sitting right above my head proceeded to deliver two very disrespectful seals of disapproval. I thought, I tried to remember and persuade myself that temporal correlation is not causal correlation, but I wasn't sure. Well, in any event, here we have a panel of distinguished colleagues. It's so great not to have to introduce them because I don't think a single one in here doesn't know who are sitting next to me. And they have been asked in alphabetical order to offer freelance type commentary about their memories, their views of what has shaped the history of our society. And so, without much ado, I will start by asking Dave Forney.
Thank you, Tony. Maybe I use the next one. I must say it. I think this is the first. Is this working? Yeah. It's a little startling for me to be on a history panel. I think this is the first one I've been on. My mental image of myself has always been as one of the younger of the older generation of information theorists. I'm really interested in what my seniors have to say here. But the idea that I would have anything to say myself is a little foreign to me. Of course, on the 99th birthday of Shannon, my thoughts do go back to Shannon, who I didn't know well. I had very limited interaction with at MIT. He was responsible for my getting back into information theory after 6 months of wandering in the wilderness when I was looking for a PhD topic, and I took his course at MIT, which was an advanced topics course, and he would come in and he would just put up a problem on the board that he'd been working on, and sometimes he had a solution or had some progress, and sometimes he didn't. And I really don't remember the details, but I got interested in one of the problems. I made some progress on it, and it's all a blur, but a year later I graduated. So maybe Bob can remember more about it. And of course, when I got out of MIT, when I was about to graduate from MIT, I asked Bob and Jack Wozencraft and others what were the great new things in information theory that I ought to be doing. And the general feeling, as probably many of you have heard at MIT at least, was it's all been done. Information theory is, if not dead, it's just a matter of some cleanup work. And the action now is going to be in applications. And so dutifully I went out, got a job in industry, which turned out to be my career. But of course, information theory wasn't quite dead. And there was, I think, a gap, which several of us have noticed. I was kind of the last of one generation, and then there was a gap before another generation really began to assume full force, and I would think maybe Sergio has something to say about that. So it was great to be out in industry, but I always kept in touch with the society, and in fact I became editor of the Transactions in 1970, which I now realize at a remarkably early age, but somebody was willing to take a chance on me. I'm not sure who it was. And what I particularly remember in the context of today's session is, of course, the 1973 ISIT in Ashkelon, which was the place where the first Shannon lecture took place, and I think we'll hear from Jacob Ziv about how and why it happened that the first Shannon lecture took place there. But there was Shannon, and he was, I must say, not in very good shape at that time, and other people remember him not being very well at all the evening before the talk, but he did manage to get to the talk, and with a lot of nervousness started out saying, well, you know, Shannon lecture, I guess it's appropriate the first Shannon lecture be Shannon, and he went on to give a very interesting and deep talk on feedback. He talked extremely well. It then happened that I was on the same airplane as him, riding back to Boston, and we went through customs together, and he was really shaking, visibly shaking, going through customs, and the customs people began to become concerned and question him, and so I rushed over and said, this is a famous scientist, and somehow we got through that. But this was a time when I guess it was a very difficult time physically and mentally for him that I have never really understood. So perhaps we'll learn more as we go around the table. Bob?
Thank you, Dave, and thank you, Tony. I'd like to make a few more comments about the early days. I would retitle this session "The History of Information Theory and Tales of Shannon," and to make that make sense, most of us have heard the expression, "Those who don't understand history are doomed to repeat it." In terms of information theory, I think it would be better to say those who are cognizant of history are able to repeat it. And I think that's basically the purpose of having this session here, so that we can think through what it is that made Shannon so great, what it is that made those early days of information theory great, and perhaps to I wouldn't say revitalize the field. The field is very vital as it is, but all fields need care at all times. I was very fortunate in the sense that when I graduated as an undergraduate, I knew nothing, and even worse, I cared nothing. I wanted to have fun. I wanted to find women. I wanted to drink. I wanted to party, and I had no interest in science at all. So I started out at Bell Labs, and but you don't know the Bell Labs of those days. Bell Labs was a fun place, and I was working on switching theory, which was a wonderful thing at the time because this was the application area of Shannon's first great work. And it was enormous fun to do switching. There were a lot of puzzles there, so I enjoyed it. 2 years later, I went in the Army, spent 2 years, a little less than 2 years in the Army, working on something called battlefield surveillance, which these days I think we would call network theory and information theory. The people guiding the work didn't know much. They weren't much good. But the people who were working there as privates, for the most part, they were bright people. We had sessions where we would learn a little bit more about information theory. I learned a little bit about it at Bell Labs. They had something called Kelly College there then, which I doubt if any of the rest of you are old enough to remember. But the idea was to take all the new employees there and have them go through 2 years of college where they would spend 2 days a week working on academic subjects. And Dave Slepian, if you might guess it, was the one teaching the information theory course. Kelly College was very different from most universities of the day. The universities of the day, people did research, and they would maybe teach us something they had to do. At Bell Labs, people did research, and because that was what they were supposed to do, they enjoyed the idea of teaching, and somebody like Dave Slepian poured enormous energy into teaching, so I probably got a better course to start me off than anywhere else. When I got back to MIT, This was the hot thing. Most new graduate students had the benefit there of being rather free to choose whatever they wanted to work on. And the thing that was the most fun at the time, the thing where there were the most puzzles, the thing where it seemed most easy to find a really neat PhD thesis was information theory. So the people who went into information theory there were absolutely brilliant. I felt very out of place, but I had the advantage that I'd been looking at these problems for 2 or 3 years, but I was still a first-year graduate student, so I was able to keep up with the whole thing, and I was able to have fun doing it. Now, I think the question is, what is it that made those days so great? Partly, of course, it was that there were so many open problems. Partly, it was that there were so many people who were working together, trying to sort things out. It was, well, also Shannon came there the year after I did on permanent assignment. He was not the usual professor. He taught this one course that Dave was talking about, gave occasional lectures, but he was certainly the spiritual leader of the whole movement, and all of us benefited by that. I think I want to talk about, very briefly, a few lessons that we all learned, or sort of learned. I will express them differently than other people would. Lesson one that I learned from Shannon the first time I talked to him was take whatever problem you're interested in, whether it's practical or not, strip it down to its simplest elements, and when you strip it down to its simplest elements, you can then start to understand it. Forget about the practicality, forget about everything else, make it simple enough that you can understand it. In other words, lesson one that I learned was keep it simple, stupid. Okay, lesson two was don't get interested in something that doesn't grab you. The thing that Shannon always did was he chose his problems himself. He didn't take an interest in the problems that Bell Labs was interested in. He had the point of view that he said that he wasn't interested in practical things. What he really meant, I think, because he was interested in practical things, was he wasn't interested in all the details of practical things. What he was interested in was taking the fundamental parts of what was practical and turning it into something that was fun and something that was interesting. Lesson three was push yourself to be interested in multiple things at the same time. This was something I'm convinced that Shannon did. There were always 10 things bubbling around in the back of his mind. They would keep bubbling there, and whatever came up in the morning when he woke up, that was something that his intuition was saying was important. That was what he would work on for that day. And I think that's why he was able to do so many really good things, because he followed his intuition. He didn't follow what everybody else told him to do. Lesson four, I think, he was a master at it, was don't let all the stuff of an academic career grind you down. In Latin, illegitimus non comprendum est, which means don't let the bastards grind you down. And Shannon was very good at that. He was somebody who always found his own things to do, partly because he had these 10 ideas burbling in the back of his mind. Finally, the last lesson I learned, which I think is the most important, is that information theory is partly science, partly mathematics, but a very large part of it is art. It is art in the same sense that music is. It is something where things are beautiful, or things aren't beautiful. He would always work on the things that were beautiful. Why is it important to work on the things that are beautiful? Because it's the things that are beautiful that make the people around you, when they understand it, get more interested in that. So when you do something, you can get other people interested in it also. I can look at the panel here. It's a remarkable panel in the sense that everyone here has done beautiful things. I would look at Jacob Ziv with the Ziv-Lempel algorithm. You look at that algorithm and it's beautiful. It was like Shannon's work. I look at Andy there and his work with the Viterbi algorithm was a beautiful piece of work too. Some people might look at it and say, oh, well, that was just dynamic programming applied to convolutional codes. No, it wasn't, because he wasn't looking at it that way. And it was taking a very important problem, but doing something absolutely beautiful with it. You read that paper, and you say, this is really nice. I look at Sergio here. He's done very, very many beautiful things. But the one that impressed me the most was a Shannon lecture a few years ago. It was a talk that was absolutely beautiful. I look at Dave here, and he's done many beautiful things with lattices and coding and so forth. The thing that impressed me the most, I think, was his work on modulation, because I had a very small part in that also. But again, this was something beautiful. It took an ugly field and turned it into an attractive field. And I think what I'm trying to say is that when you're doing research, look for the beauty in things. Don't just do ugly things. Don't do messy things. Don't deal with too many equations. Look for something that's really beautiful. Thank you.